So and they have the fuel injectors, right?
Correct.
Okay. So there was.
The fuel injection has only been the last 3 years. I think it's been.
Okay. Because then maybe I'll ask you to explain that. But anyway, let's come back here.
Okay.
Well, I learned something. The segments that we're doing with Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com on NASCAR and really all of motorsports. I mean, NHRA, we were talking a little bit about the Indianapolis 500 when you were interviewing Danica Patrick earlier and all this. But they've become so, what can I say? They've become so impressive, and there's become such a following that I noticed you actually had to take your phone off your hook and actually put it on Do Not Disturb because of so many people with your added celebrity now on Tri-City Sports Now calling up, I understand, Jerry. But no, I was talking a little bit about some technical stuff here. But I guess the story of yesterday's race was Martin Truex Jr., performing so well. The pole, the 2 stages, winning the actual race. There's going to be some questions. Would that have happened if you didn't have the Logano, Harvick wreck from the side draft in lap 39? Because Harvick was coming on strong. I understand that. But, I guess this battle line now for this season is set. A rivalry between Harvick and the defending champ Truex. What do you think of the likelihoods is that this is going to be kind of, they're 2 of the top drivers, but this is going to be the 2 drivers that are really going to compete for the Cup championship this year. What do you think the odds of that happening are?
Well, I don't really think that it's a new rivalry. I think the rivalry started last year. I mean, there was a lot of, interaction, if you will, between Truex and Harvick in 2017 as well. So I think if anything, it will continue the rivalry. But, Truex, he just dominated the weekend. And what more can you say? And, if I'm Harvick, or even if I'm Jimmy Johnson for that matter, I've got to be a little ticked off because this is, Fontana's my home track. And here comes a guy from New Jersey who comes in and he winds up beating me at my home track. And, of course, Harvick, he kind of he didn't have much control over that because he had the crash with Joey Logano early in the race. And then, of course, Jimmy Johnson, well, he's still looking out there trying to figure out what's going on with his car. But, I think that, there is definitely going to be a rivalry between Truex, not just with Harvick, but pretty much everybody. Because remember, he's the defending champion, too.
I thought that, therefore, him ending the streak, although one could argue that Joey Logano and Harvick did that to themselves, but I thought that his victory, if you will, like I said, that was the story. That was, okay, you're trying to establish stars now in NASCAR. Here we go. And you mentioned it began last year. That's a very interesting point here, Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com. But I guess let me go back to that wreck in lap 39, because this was how my other take on it. You had a Ford versus a Chevy, the classic American rivalry, but now it's a pony car against a sedan. And I know, it's not 1961 anymore. These aren't, this isn't a stock car technically, but still you would have, it would seem to me to be a longer car in the Fusion than the Camaro. And yet the Camaro was able to hold its own when trading paint and on the side draft and actually knock the Fusion off of the track. Was this, in your mind, anything like a step for Chevy, like an argument for the Camaro in this year's circuit? And that maybe it's something that we could, see, we've talked about Mustang getting in, but that it was, 0.1 for Camaro. Did you take it as that in any way?
Well, it obviously shows the stability and the aerodynamics of the Camaro. I mean, a lot of people have been very excited about the Camaro coming into the series. I'm one of them. I thought it was, long overdue to see, cars that people really want to drive on their own. I mean, with all due respect, another Chevy model may not exactly get a lot of fans, excited. Excuse me. But I mean, when you say the Camaro, that gets them interested because there's a lot of TV shows like Hawaii Five-0 and that feature the Chevy Camaro. It's always been one of the more exciting, one of the better selling models for Chevy. And I think that the onus now is on Ford for the Mustang to change the Fusion
Jerry, I want to ask, we talked last week about the roughness of the track at Sonoma. And I know that, Kyle Busch, there's talk about, hey, crew did well changing the tires and such. At what point did you think that maybe the management, the pit management, was a factor in this race? Did you see that at all while you were watching the Auto Parts 400?
No, I didn't really see it. I mean, I kind of expected it. I mean, the thing is, these teams adapt their pit strategies. Much of it related to the track and the track surface, how well the tires, or how much the tires wear down and wear off, and fall off quickly. So, it's not a question of you go into a track like that and you don't know what you're doing, because you've got, several years of data. Probably, most of these teams carry 10 years of data, if they've been racing at a place that long. So they've got a chance to look at, what works, what doesn't work. So I don't think there really was that much. I mean, there was a modification because it's a different kind of track. It's a 2-mile track. And yeah, it's a very hard abrasive surface, much like Atlanta was, in the second race this season. But, these teams, they're well aware of what Fontana brings and how they are to adapt to that track.
Still, though, I guess one of the things that I'm looking at here, Truex has won 13 of 65 races and breaks the winning streak and all this. Who can break these two drivers that are really dominating the series right now? I mean, it's now news that Jimmy Johnson finishes 9th. So who do you see maybe being able to take on this dynamic duo in races going forth, and to try to make a play for a championship that it seems like these two guys really have the upper hand on at the beginning of the season? Who do you foresee?
Well, I think a couple of guys come to mind immediately. I mean, first is Kyle Busch. I think that he's been up there almost every race this season. So he just hasn't been able to put the car in the victory lane. But I think that's coming very soon. And the other one is the other Kyle Larson. I think that I thought for sure he was my pick to win yesterday. And when he got into the wreck with Harvick, that kind of pretty much ended the things. But at the same point though, you're looking at two different types of drivers out there. I mean, you've got Truex and Harvick are veterans. You've got Kyle Busch is a veteran, but then Larson, he's only been around the circuit for 4 or 5 years, I guess it's been. So you've got to start looking at some of the newer guys who may have a chance to break up some of that monopoly of the older guys. I mean, I like a guy like a Ryan Blaney or an Eric Jones or a Chase Elliott or a William Byron. I mean, I'm really still excited about how this season's going to play out, because Harvick has a 3-race winning streak. Truex wins yesterday, but I think we're going to see a lot of different names in victory lane going forward over these next probably 5 to 10 races. You're going to see a lot of different guys in there. It's not going to be the more of the same between Truex and Harvick going forward, in my opinion.
You mentioned Ryan Blaney, and he was running towards leading the field, among the leaders of the field, is what I'm trying to say here, Jerry. If I can spit out my coffee here, do I have any left? No, I don't. Anyway, this is my problem here. But yeah, I do like him. I mean, coming from a racing family, coming from a basketball family. I think his uncle played basketball at West Virginia and was actually drafted into the NBA in one of the later rounds that no longer exists. But that's a guy there that I've always thought that, there isn't the criticism like you get with the Chase Elliott of, hey, when are you going to start winning one here? You're supposed to be the most popular driver, but you're 0 for, 82 or so. Blaney, I still think, is relatively fresh and driving very well. So you mentioned him. I could. That's one of the young guns that I might look forward to seeing here. Well, just talking a little bit off the air here, and this is going to be my final question because I do have to mention something else here in this segment here, Jerry. But there was some talk after the race about the sealed engines, and you were telling me, I mean, it's not carburetors anymore. That's somewhat old-fashioned these days, and we were talking about how long it has gone to the sealed engines. But I was noticing, I think it was Busch who was talking about, they're going to have to take the engine out of the car and look at that. I'm curious. How often, and forgive my naivete here, but they were talking about replacing the engines in the race car after a good run. does every car, I mean, are engines at all used race to race at all? I would have thought so, but am I naive here? I just wanted to ask you how that works on the circuit.
No, actually, you go back about, we were talking off the air, go back about 10 years or so. That's when sealed engines came into play with NASCAR, and then, you were not allowed to make any major modifications on the engine itself. I mean, for the whole weekend, because, what you brought is what you raced. And, you can certainly tear an engine, and part of the, to answer your question also, that part of the reason for the sealed engines was to have them be able to be reused. There was, back when they first were introduced, the talk was, well, you'd race at Daytona with the same one, you'd race at Atlanta with the same one, you'd race at Bristol with the same one, and, it was a great theory, or a great principle in theory. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way.
Mm-hmm.
And, the teams have gone back to building engines specifically for certain tracks as well, too. So I think, looking at where we're at right now, I don't see any major changes going forward, but again, NASCAR wants to, to keep things as state-of-the-art as possible, but I don't see the state of, seeing the sealed engines rule change anytime soon. Yeah, it's got away from what they originally planned, but, it's a lot better than having, teams changing 2-3 engines on the same weekend like they used to do it.
If you're naive like me, the best way I can describe it is that you're talking about fuel injectors instead of the old-fashioned carburetors. And I remember when this started to come in, the beginning of the century, usually at some of the lower levels like the Charger series or so, and it was actually kind of controversial. I mean, it's like, this isn't a real stock car, and all that. But it was more cost-effective for the people on that level. I was just surprised that it caught on so quickly, and I know that I'm behind the times in learning that. Anyway, Jerry, I want to thank you for joining me here. I do have to let you go because I do need to mention that since the 1950s or so, WEMB has been broadcasting, WEMB and WXIS, I should say, have been broadcasting Unicoi County sports, and that continues. We're going to have our first baseball and softball broadcast this week. Here are the sponsors of those broadcasts. It's Health and Home Care, Irwin Paint and Body. They do good work. They've worked on my car. Unicoi County Insurance Agency, Clinchfield Federal Union, Dr. Jason Cunningham, Urgent Care of Irwin, that's Lance DeBoert, Barnes Exterminating, the Kiwanis Club of Irwin, the Unicoi County Town Officials, Irwin Utilities, who have been in the sports world lately, talking about, are they going to take over the treatment plant at Buffalo Valley? That's, it's a good sponsor for a sportscast, is it not? That would be, of course, Irwin Utilities, but they're also joined by Unicoi County Gas Utility District, the computer guy in Irwin, who I'm going to see after the show. Yeah, Vance always does a good job, plus I like looking at his autographed picture of Shania Twain. Relay for Life of Unicoi County, and of course, WEMB, wisely employing Marky Billson, WXIS, and Jet Broadcasting. That's 1420 NBC Sports Radio, Tri-Cities, the station you're listening to now, as well as Livewire 103.9, where you get all your news from. Hey, Colin Coward is coming up next. We do this every day, noon to 2, Tri-City Sports Now. I'm Marky Billson. See you tomorrow.